So exciting. And I know you guys are coming to us at all different time zones. So thank you for being with us and for spending your time with us today. In addition to creating tutorial videos, which Rodrigo from our team posted in the chat for you, I also host the Rework podcast that we do at 37 Signals. We'll post a link to that as well. That is with our founders, Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen, where they share some of their philosophies on business and a better way to work. So we'll put that in the link as well and check it out. Okay, last housekeeping note before I bring my colleagues on. Also on the right side of your screen, you will see a little poll section. I'm going to pop that visible. We'd love to know what level of Basecamper you think you are. So novice, as in you've never seen the product, don't even know what we do here, and expert, you just want to hang out with us. So let us know with that poll kind of where you think you rank. That'll help us as we're going through questions today to get a feel for who is with us in the audience. Okay, with that, I'm going to introduce a few of my colleagues here on the Basecamp team, starting with the head of customer success, Laura.
Hi, Kimberly. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad you're all joining us today. I'm Laura. I've been at 37 Signals leading Basecamp Customer Success for a little over a year now. And we're just excited to continue to offer you all these fun ways to learn more about the product and how to make it work for you.
And you probably have heard from Laura, not only the confirmation email that you got, but if you've started as a new customer recently, you probably got some onboarding messages from her as well. So you can put a face with the name. I also want to introduce my colleague and the demo queen, Ashley, who's with us. Hello,
hey,
Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing really well today. My name is Ashley. I've been at Basecamp for 6 years. And in that time, we've really evolved into a lot of one-on-one help. So if there's anything that feels like, I need to just have a discussion with someone, my situation is so specific, just let us know. guides@basecamp.com. We'll say that address a lot. We'll write it down. But send us an email. You'll either speak with me or you'll speak with my wonderful colleague, Rodrigo. And you'll see him in the chat too.
Amazing. That's a perfect transition. Laura and Rodrigo will both be in the chat today, answering some of those questions that might be quick, but also dropping links for us, helping us field some of those questions. So they'll be with us this whole time, even though we're going to send them to the back in just a bit. But I do want to introduce our special guest. So Ashley, Laura, Rodrigo, and I are all in customer success, but we wanted to bring someone who was an expert in the field we're talking about today, which is web design. And so we're bringing on Jason Zimdars with us. Jason, known internally as Jay-Z, is a principal designer at 37 Signals and leads the web design team. With nearly 14 years with the company, Jay-Z is a design manager and has worked on just about every product in the company's portfolio, including both Basecamp and our email platform, Hey. I want to show you a quick look at a recent design review session Jay-Z did with our company's CEO, Jason Fried. Let me pop that up for you guys.
Basically, we just open a composer at the top, and then we give you a list of all the threads that are going to be replied to.
Nice.
So you can
just out of curiosity, can you open any of those threads or not?
Yeah, so you can click the title to look at the thread. You can look at the contact if you want.
Right.
And you can also just, if you want to further prune this list, so you could peek at a thread and go, oh wait, no, not that one.
Yeah.
And sort of manage it at, kind of micromanage it in the moment.
That's nice. That's really nice, actually. Uh-huh.
Okay, let's bring him on with no further delay. Jay-Z, welcome.
Hey. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited that you're here. Okay, so I said in your intro, you've been with the company for 14 years. That's a very long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
go ahead.
I was going to say, just tell us a little bit about your background with Basecamp, what you've been doing this whole 14 years with us.
Literally the same thing. I've been a product designer at the company since 2009, and so I've worked on, like you said, almost everything we've ever released at some point. Today, I work mostly on our Hey email client, but I work in Basecamp and on Basecamp here and there as well. And I'm also working with some of the designers, some of my reports who also work on Basecamp. So I'm directly involved a lot with what's going on with both products.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have you share your screen with us and kind of walk through a little bit about what your home screen looks like, how you have your projects divided up in a web design kind of aspect, and then we'll dig into a specific project when you're ready.
Cool. All right. Well, let me see if I can share my screen here. Always a dicey proposition.
It's okay. It'll be worth the wait. That's what I
Yeah.
keep
All right. So this is my Basecamp home screen. One of the things I want to start off is just to say that I've been using Basecamp for a long time, even before I worked at 37 Signals. So I will probably say things in passing that I don't realize are novel or interesting. So feel free to just jump in the chat and ask me to clarify anything if something comes up. But what I'm going to show you here, starting with just my home screen Basecamp. Obviously, there's all my recently visited projects, but I highly curate this list of projects with pins. And so it's sort of a mix of things. There are things that sort of in the top row where it's our company HQ, our product team, our heartbeat and check-in team project for what works. And these are things I use frequently, so that they're just kind of pinned for convenience. But then I also, towards the bottom, you can see cycle 1, cycle 2. These are indications of ongoing projects. And so I keep the stuff that I'm working on currently right there where I could find it easily. And then finally, you can see there's a few these personal development or welcome projects where we these are management tasks. So I've projects for each of my direct reports where we keep track of things, keep documents with from reviews and things like that. I thought it might be fun to jump in first with just sort of a casual thing. And
JZ, before you do that, I'm going to just jump in because I think this is a good place to show people how you have so many different projects, all the way from that 37 Signals HQ is one the entire company is on. So lots of people on that one, to you have projects with just you and one other person. So it kind of runs the gamut. And then you also have projects that are time-based, have a start and end, which are those cycle 1 and cycle 2 that we're seeing. And then some that are ongoing, like your designers and management design projects. Those keep going indefinitely. They don't ever end and get archived.
Right, totally. So I thought I'd jump into the designers one if you think that's a good place to start.
That's great.
So this is basically a team project for everybody who's sort of in a creative design role at the company. That it's mostly the product designers, but we also have a marketing web designer. We have Glenn, who I think is more of like a creative director, but working on marketing. But everybody's that's sort of involved in the brand and visual design of the products is here. And really, this is just a place for us to mostly we chat. So, sharing things that come up, questions about something that's broken or, something interesting that we saw that's sort of design related. We'll use the chat for that. We do have this automatic questions about, have you seen any interesting design lately? So here you can see people share different things they've stumbled across, and we will get in there and discuss that as well. Nice to see a little bit of inspiration. And then we keep things, practical things here. So our docs and files section has, brand assets and fonts and icons and things that everybody on the team shares and just needs easy access to. That kind of comes from the just annoyance of, people ask you like, can I get the Basecamp logo? Can I get the Basecamp logo? Right. And you just put it there and they can go get it themselves. They don't even have to ask, they know where the designer project is. Everybody in the company, you can see in this just following, has access to this. but it's the designers that are really doing most of the work in here. On the schedule, you can see, our weekly hangouts, one-on-ones that I've scheduled with my reports, all that's here. And then, that's really what we're doing on the design team project.
That's
Any
great.
questions about that?
Well, actually, we do have a question that just popped in. It was someone who registered earlier asked this question, but since we're here, I think we can get you to answer that. How can Basecamp help me improve my ways of working as a designer, specifically in research, design, and testing? I feel like that automatic check-in question about design inspiration got some of that research part answered. But any ideas about testing?
So yeah, this project is not the best place to do that, but we do QA testing on every single project. I'm going to pull up one of my recently completed projects. So it won't show you the full picture because everything's done at this point. But we use the card table tool mostly for our QA testing. And so everything starts out as a card in the triage section. We mark it in progress. We mark it when we fixed it. We mark it in this QA to confirm fix column where QA can take another look at it, make sure that we address the problem the way they expected us to. There's a not now section. So here are things that were reported that, maybe they're out of scope. Maybe we just decided that that's a good suggestion, but we're not going to go with that right now. And then you can see everything that was done too. This is probably I would say that QA testing is maybe the primary reason that we designed the card table feature in the first place, because we found that just using to-dos and to-do lists wasn't quite cutting it.
Well, and it's interesting because I know Sean on the marketing team, who does updates to our basecamp.com website, also uses card table for addition requests. So when someone's like,
Yeah.
oh, I need an update to a website, he just throw a card in the card table for him. So a different portion of our company that does some web design, but he handles that through card table as well.
Yeah, almost every team at the company has some sort of incoming request place, and there's often a card table set up for that. So I'm not certain we have much here. We do actually. So the designers team has the same thing. You can see this card table here. We have triage. These are just, you can see by the titles: emoji picker, covered if near chat top, minor visual bug. A lot of these are little bugs that people stumbled across, visual design related bugs. And they drop them here so that when a designer has some free time, they can take a look. Obviously, if something's critical, it gets pushed to a different place. But these are things where it's just like little kind of like home repair kind of projects where something needs a little polish, or there's an edge case that maybe infrequent, but we need to address it at some point. So you can see that we have sort of a little workflow here. So triage is where new stuff comes in. It's the inbox. Review and scheduling just means that somebody's taking a look at it and trying to investigate, what the fix is. And then we have, working on and waiting on and done.
That's great. JZ, I wonder if we could go back to that cycle project that you had, because you have some specific tools selected for it. And I think it would be interesting to kind of walk those through. I think a place people sometimes get hung up with Basecamp is it's so flexible and you can structure projects kind of however makes sense for how you want to work. So maybe talking us through how you chose these kind of tools or what you use them for would be helpful.
Yeah. So, one of the things that Basecamp allows us to do, this is a completed project, so you're going to see everything sort of buttoned up here at the end. But I think, for someone who's new to Basecamp, sometimes seeing the final product is maybe the best way to understand where you're going when you're making a project. So I think it's helpful to see something that's not necessarily in progress, but all done and shipped. And in fact, I make little conventions here. So here in the project description, we list who works on it, who's the team, and after it's shipped, I update that description so that I know when it's shipped. It's funny how you forget these things, down the road. And I always think, a lot of times, if a customer support agent is getting questions about a feature, it's helpful for them to go, well, when did that launch? Do you think it's, was this customer experience this problem before it launched? Where do I find things like the internal announcement? So every feature we announce to our team in Basecamp to explain the feature, explain maybe the things it doesn't do or any known issues. So there's just a record, especially for customer support, to know, like, what does this thing do? What doesn't it do? What should customers expect? So there's a real education aspect to it. So if I open this up, this just links to another project in Basecamp where we've described the feature. And so we tell we share the whole flow, how it all looks, how it works, and in great detail. And then there's even some discussion. Sometimes people are sharing feedback using it, or I noticed a little bug, so there's some discussion involved as well.
And that linking to other projects is opening a door. And when Ashley joins us, we'll have her walk through exactly how to open a door and all the options that are available to you.
Yeah, cool. So, and we have other things. So, the GitHub pull request gets a door here. So that's easy to find. A deployment notice is a little bit different type of announcement that just tells people that I've shipped something to production. If something goes wrong, who to get a hold of, what to even be looking for, what kind of things could be affected by this deploy. It's good to have that handy as well. And then finally, here's a beta server. So this is a beta server for our QA testing team to try the feature. It's nice to have that link handy here.
That's great. And then you guys use Campfire just for casual chats amongst your group, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so Campfire is really just, each project team is essentially a programmer and a designer, and most of our communication is through this Campfire chat. So we're discussing issues as they come up, and sketching ideas, and just working through the project rather than jumping on a call or writing something long form with a lot of formality. We just jump into this chat, and it's asynchronous. Matt here is he's in Ireland. I'm in the central US. So we, it's helpful for me to be able to just drop something in here, and he'll see it in the morning. And if you go through here, you see lots of that, where I've said something late in the day, and then he responds, when he comes online much, much later. It's nice to have that asynchronous flow. No, we're not trying to coordinate like, okay, can we get in there and during our overlap time, try and find time for a call. We just talk and leave each other messages.
And while we're on Campfire, I'm going to pop up Chloe's question, which is Campfire really just like public group pings? And I think the answer could be yes, but it is contained within a project. So whereas pings, you can ping anyone individually or as a group within any project, Campfire stays within the project that you're in.
Correct. Yeah, and functionally they are the same. You could do all the same things in pings that you can in Campfires. That reminds me that somebody might wonder, well, why don't I just ping Matt? And then it's just this private conversation between us. And that's great. But this is one, the Campfire is scoped to this project. So I don't have to go looking. If I work with Matt on 6 projects this year, I don't have to go back through the ping transcript to figure out, well, where was that one, the stuff about this, and where's the stuff about this other project? This is contained to that project. And then it's also, it's on the record for the project. So we can go back through here and say, now I don't remember why I made that decision, or why we decided to cut this part of the feature, or why we changed the name of that. Well, hopefully that discussion is captured here. If I had that in a Zoom call with him, yeah, I could record it, but who's going to watch a Zoom recording to go find an answer? So here, all that conversation, not only is it asynchronous, but it's on the record, so we can go back and look through it. Someone coming new to the project or new to the team can look back at projects and see past decisions, all by reviewing this transcript. They couldn't do that if we did that in a private chat in a ping.
That's great.
I have 2 points. One of them is that it also makes it easier for anyone at your company to find this information. So we have that little find option at the very top right-hand side of that menu bar. And using that, coming from a support perspective, being able to look for just a keyword and finding that in the Campfire chat is so important and so helpful. Because then even if I'm explaining it to someone, this is why we made that choice, I now have that context without, again, having to watch some kind of Zoom call. And then the other thing is, if we go into the project, you'll see that there are people divided into who's on the project and who's just following. And the people who are on the project are the ones that are automatically notified about the Campfire chat. So even if you click escape for a moment here and then click on the 3 dots in the Campfire chat right there, it's notifying just 9 people. It's not overwhelming a bunch of folks with information. These are the folks who have either self-designated on the project or at least are decided to be curious about whatever the conversations are happening in the space. So it's public, but it can also be kind of contained.
Amazing. Let's also jump in while we're talking about public versus private. Misha's question is, can everyone at the company see those projects? Maybe we can jump into, looks like this one, the cycle 1 is all access.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to jump in and tell us kind of what that means?
I'm happy to. All access means that an employee, there are 3 different roles that someone can have in your account. It can be an employee, a collaborator, or a client. And so these kind of middle and last roles don't have the same things that an employee would. And one of those things is being able to click on, for example, home, and then view all projects in a list in like the directory view, and then access and join any of the projects that are listed as all access. So right there at the end, just before archived and trashed, that's where all access is. So if Jay-Z wanted to, you could click on the test project, which actually I made. So if you wanted to, you can join it. And so it takes you into that space as an employee. So a collaborator doesn't see that, a client doesn't see this option, but it just means that this particular project is open to anyone who I know is an employee.
That's great. And Ashley, when we jump to sharing your screen, let's walk through starting a project and where you change that setting to make something all access. We'll get to Chloe's question with that.
For sure.
Okay, perfect. Jay-Z, is there anything else that you wanted to show us in terms of project or project structure before we switch over to Ashley and her answering some questions as well?
Well, I think it would be a shame if we didn't talk about to-dos.
Do it.
This is where a lot of the work in the project happens, and this is the essential part of how we figure out what to work on, when to work on it, and how to know when the project's done. So you can see again, this is a completed project, so there's a lot of green check marks indicating completed to-dos, which is a very good thing. And we still may have an odd item here or there that isn't finished, and those are things that we might get to later or we decide weren't important. One of the things that's great about this, you can see this hill chart has this nice stack of all my to-do lists all completed. So everything's done, everything's hit the finish line. But if I click on this, I can go through and I can see the history. So you can look back and see as these dots move backwards in time. This one's got a little bit of a update with some design. This is a little sneak peek at a design that we explored but didn't make it to the final product. And so you can see as we talk, we share updates, and you can see those little dots heading backwards through time. So it's a good way to look at the history of the project. And one thing you'll notice is there are only 4 to-do lists when we start out, but when we get to the end, now we've got 7. And that's one of the things that's essential to the way we work. We start out with just the to-dos we list, the to-dos we need, the known quantities in the project, but we uncover things as we go, or we learn that maybe there's another scope that we could handle separately. When I say scope, we're always looking for parts of the project that could be completed independently. Is there a part of the feature that we could ship by itself, or at least complete before we move on to the next part? If you look at, if any of you read Jason Fried's Hey World, he posted something about this just this week. The idea that the natural tendency with projects is to just like dive in and work everything and kind of making progress, moving, jumping in here, jumping in there, making a little progress in a lot of areas all at once. And instead, we try to focus on one part, get that done, and then move on to the next part. So that we always know where we are, because it isn't 6 things that are on their way. It's 3 things that are done and 3 things that aren't.
Okay, so Jason, since you've been showing a hill chart, I'm going to jump to this question that we got when someone registered.
Sure.
Can hill charts be started even though a project is well underway?
Oh, yeah.
I know Ashley's also a hill chart fan, so you guys jump in on getting that started. So
one of the things is you can see here. This is where you select which list to track on the hill chart, and we don't do all of them. Some of this feedback is just a place to store some things, but you can turn this on or off at any point in the project. And we don't often have it on right away. If we go back in my hill chart history here, you'll see that we got pretty far before we actually made our first hill chart update. So there are early parts of the project where you're just kind of figuring things out, like what are we even working on, how are we going to do it, how are we going to split up the work. And it's okay to not use the hill chart at that point. Pull the tool out when it makes sense, when it's going to communicate something or be useful to you. Don't force it. That's great. I'm going to go to a couple of design specific questions, Jay-Z, for you. Sure. While you're still here, and then we'll hop to Ashley questions. How can you increase design teams' engagement using Basecamp? I mean, we clearly use Basecamp exclusively for our communication, but any tips specific to increasing design teams' engagement? Yeah, I mean, engagement is sort of the typical problem when people are jumping into Basecamp. It's somebody's sort of the champion that brings it to the company or the team, and then they've got to sort of convince other people to use it. I think the main thing is just making it useful. People will use something if there's a benefit for them, if they could see the benefits. So the classic example of in my personal life and personal projects, there's a point where if I'm going back and forth with someone, a contractor, a client, someone like that, and it gets to be like 3 or 4 email threads, or I'm having trouble keeping track of what's said and what's not said and where we are. That's when I say, okay, we're going to flip this over to Basecamp and put this in Basecamp, where the communication makes more sense. There's no issues with, did you reply all? Did you not reply all? Did everyone, get the message? Did everyone respond? Everything's just in one place. And that's a huge benefit for everybody involved. So I would, if your team's reluctant to use Basecamp, show them where it's easier to get their work done, easier to answer their own questions, because they can just look at Basecamp rather than finding somebody. Easy to see what they have to work on next by creating to-dos and maybe assigning them if that's how your workflow works. That's great. And I know before working here, I used Basecamp in my own business for about a dozen years, and used to constantly be telling clients, it's in Basecamp. Don't text me. It's in Basecamp. Like, just reiterating that message over and over again is helpful, I think. Yeah, I think everybody would rather solve something themselves than have to, keep asking or bugging someone about it. Okay, Jay-Z, another design question for you. As a manager of one, I'm a developer and a designer. How can I create projects and follow ShapeUp methods? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know about ShapeUp. There's certainly going to be, it's going to be a different experience if you're doing it as a one-person show, because you're sort of making all the decisions and doing the shaping and bedding table and compromising and design and development. The main thing about ShapeUp that I think is universal to whatever team size is you figure out what you want to do and what the appetite for it is, because that's really how you make your decisions. The decisions are based on, do I not have enough time for this? Is this worth doing? If your appetite is 3 weeks and you hit a roadblock, you're like, oh man, this might take 2 or 3 weeks more, that's a point where you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? I said my appetite was 3 weeks. Do I really have an appetite for 5? Should I? And then your question is, do I, stop and think and do something else? Or do I find a way to cut scope so that I can fit it within 3 weeks? Now you kind of have to have those conversations with yourself as a solo developer. But the idea is that you define what you're going to work on, and then you have that appetite. So you have a basis to make decisions. It's different than a deadline where it's easy to fudge on a self-imposed deadline. But an appetite's very different. You've decided this is the amount of work that this is worth, and now you can make decisions up against it. You have to have something to make decisions against, right?
That's helpful. Okay, I think let's switch our camera angle here. Ashley, I'm going to have you share your screen if we can do that. There are a couple of specific questions that I think would be good with a screen share from Ashley. Ashley runs all of our one-on-one demos along with Rodrigo, and they're used to doing this day in and day out, showing people how to use different tools and different features. So with that, I'm going to go to this first question is, how do you suggest integrating Trello or Jira or tools that aren't client-facing and a client-facing Basecamp? It's kind of a two-parter, Ashley.
Yeah.
One, which is doors, and then also how clients work in Basecamp. So I'll let you take it away.
Okay, so let's approach the actual tools, talking to Trello and Jira. So there is one way, and you can kind of see Dino's answered. You can use an external company like Unito or like Zapier to kind of connect the two together. And so you can just do a quick search for Zapier, Basecamp, Jira, and then kind of see the specific platforms that will connect the two together if you're looking for data to go in from one to the other. So if something happens in Basecamp, I want this to happen, something different to happen in Jira. So that's one way to approach it. But another way to approach it is modeled here in a door. So maybe I'm using Figma for my design work, and I don't necessarily want my data to go from Figma to Basecamp, or maybe that just feels too complicated for the moment. Use a door. Click those 3 dots on the top right-hand side of the page. Click on Change Tools. This is where you can change all of your tools that already exist that are Basecamp native, but this is also where you can open kind of like a beautiful link to some external platform. And so we have a ton of different logos here to kind of indicate what they are, but there also is external service. So if you're not seeing Jira up here, even though it is here, or if you're not seeing Trello, then you click on external service, paste the link that you need, and it'll show up just like these other tools. And this also kind of leads into the client question. There is also a way to hide those doors from your clients. You can do this by first adding a client to your account, or to your account and then to this project. So I've already taken that step. I've already added them to the account. And then when I click on this project, I set up people. Of course, I can add folks that are collaborators and employees, but going a little bit further down in the page, there's an option to add a client. And so you'll see, if you have never added someone, you'll have the full instructions there. But since I've already done this, I have this client listed here in yellow. I see them over here in yellow. This yellow theme kind of moves around no matter where you are. And when you create something new, you also have the option to decide, is this private to our team, or decide this is something I want the client to see. And you can decide later too. So it's not like you are stuck with your commitment there. Did I miss any part of that question?
No, that's great. And also, let's throw in the chat. I have a video that's all about working with clients that walks you through the process of not only getting them into your account, but how you can share different elements like Ashley showed to the project. So clients only see the things that you want them to see, nothing else. So that's great. And thank you for linking that, Rodrigo.
Yes, it's a great video. Please watch it.
There's a lot of information. It's funny because I feel like a lot of people get nervous about having clients within their Basecamp project, but because everything is private by default, you really have to flip a switch for them to see anything. So that I think is really helpful in the process and kind of alleviating the nerves of having clients in your Basecamp project.
Totally.
Okay, let's go to Chloe's question about all access projects. How can you get a project all access so anyone who's in your Basecamp account can choose to go see it if they want to?
Yeah, 2 ways to do it. One of them is if the project already exists, click again on those 3 dots and then on edit project details. This is where Jay-Z had the update of like this shipped on February 8th. So instead of adjusting the description, we're going to look a little further down and look at those radio buttons. And it's currently set, the default is currently set to invite only. We tend to err on the side of private, and then public, being another option. So here I'll choose all access, and maybe I want anyone from Enormicom to see this, anyone from the company, or maybe I'll choose plus the clients. So you have just a few options here. We save the changes, and then you have that little all access tag on the top left-hand side of the project. Now, if you're creating a project brand new, you can click on make a new project, and the same option is there at the bottom. So instead of going into edit project details, you have those same choices here. Same with the start and end dates. So this should look a little bit familiar now.
And just like client access, everything is private to start. So when you started a new project, like Ashley just popped up, it starts as being invite only. You have to physically change it to make it where anyone can jump in. Okay. Question that we have here, what about solopreneurs or people who work alone? I've had a hard time figuring out how to use Basecamp by myself. I think all three of us probably have Basecamp projects that are just ourselves on it.
Definitely. For people who work alone, well, then that kind of gives you a lot of flexibility to determine how you want the entire thing laid out. And so maybe it makes sense for you to have one project per client. And so whenever you create something, maybe you know that this is like my client project. I think one way to start making those decisions would be to use a template. And these are not pre-populated, so you need to go ahead and create a template for the first time. And then when you're here, this is where you can decide, you know what, every time I have a new client, I want to make sure that if I'm inviting them, I have a welcome message written out. You can, of course, add to the body of the message if you want. Correct. Put in, corrected. And maybe you also, for yourself, want to be able to say, you know what, every single time I have a new client, I know that we kind of have 3 different phases, and I want to pre-plan what it is that I know I have to do, no matter what it is, no matter who the client is, rather. And so whether you plan all of this out, and whether you actually go from phase 1 to phase 4, maybe you stop at phase 3. One of the best things about having all this information already in a template is that if you don't need to see everything at one time, you can toggle these tools off and the data will not leave. So I will just click on off for a bunch of these. And maybe since it's just me asking myself questions, I might turn this off in every client project. But now I have something a little bit more focused. I have the choice to add this client. And then if I do move towards adding maybe that second phase of ways of working with this person, then I can go back to change tools and pull it back up. Also, I'm not sure who asked this question, but if you want to have a chat about how your work might align with Basecamp, and we can get into the specifics of it, guides@basecamp.com. That's going to be a great way to contact us and just say, hi, I was in the call. I would like to have a discussion with Rodrigo or with Ashley, and we'll speak with you directly too.
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
I mentioned this in my demo, and I think it's an important point, especially if you're wanting to use Basecamp. So like part of the benefit here is history and having everything about the project in one place, all the correspondence, all the, creative assets, having it all there, the final deliverables. If you're working in email and Photoshop and stuff's on your computer, that stuff's all spread out, and how you're organizing that, might determine whether or not you could find that stuff for a client later. So, even something where I don't do a lot of like to-dos in Basecamp, I'll throw the files up into the project at the end of the project, just so they're there. They're in the cloud. I don't have to worry about it. I can just sign into Basecamp and get them. And if the client ever needs them, I can just give them access to the project later, and they can download them themselves.
I have one thing to add that relates to Kimberly, because something that she said a long time ago just stuck in my mind, that she used to use Basecamp as kind of a tool to say, look at how organized things will be for like prospective clients, right?
That's true. I actually used to use, in my previous world, I had an event planning company, and I used Basecamp really as a selling tool to show people from day one, like, this is how we're going to organize everything. Like, let me show you how we keep track of everything. And it's all in one place. So it was really helpful in that regard, for sure.
That's surprisingly common. We've seen that from a lot of customers over the years, that it ends up in their RFPs and in their proposals to get work.
Well, while we're on the subject of clients, let's jump to Chloe's question. And Ashley, I think maybe you can walk us through how we can turn things on and off. But if you add clients after the fact and things are internal by default, does everything then become visible by default?
Definitely not. When you're thinking about clients in Basecamp, think private first, then public, because that's generally our way of working here. And so if I add a client to, let's pick a different project. If I had a client to this particular space, which is all internal, there's no client here. Let's go ahead and scroll down like we talked about before. I actually already added this person. So let's add these people. It was just this person named Gina. Now we have an individual in this particular project. And now when I go into the message board, none of these are visible to the client. Everything stays default private. But what I can do is I can change this on every single message and make it visible to the client. Now, we don't have like a turn on all visible button. There is technically one on the back end. So if it's a huge project and everything really does need to be seen by the client, it's kind of an extreme circumstance. Let us know at support@basecamp.com. And there is a way for us to make that a little bit easier for you. But it does not show everything by default. Instead, you'll have to go ahead and decide, you know what, this list, I'll make it visible to the client.
And the only caveat I would add to that, Chloe, is if you already have one client in the project and you've turned things on for them, if you add a second client to the project, those things that are already client open will be open to that new person. So you can't individually choose which client sees parts of a project. It's either all clients can see it or all clients cannot see it.
Yep.
Okay, we have one more question. And JC, I think this is maybe for you. How does the design team collaborate with PMs? We don't really have project managers here. So maybe you can take that one from a philosophical standpoint.
Well, so I could say for us, yes, the designers really operate as the project managers in our company. So I don't know if I should answer that in a hypothetical way in some other place, but here it's one and the same, and really it's not a formal designation. The designers typically run projects at Basecamp. But it's very collaborative when you're working on a 2-person team with a programmer. You're both very invested in the project. You're both trying to ship the best thing possible. There are compromises. A lot of times, I may design something, then the programmer will go, well, if we did this or we changed it to this, the implementation is that or whatever. And so we're both responsible for the outcome of the project. We just don't have anyone in a specific role to do just that part.
Well, it looks like we've answered all of our questions. If you have anything else that comes up later for you, you can always send us an email. We've said that email address a couple of times. I'm going to post it up here on the screen. It is guides@basecamp.com. If you need to reach us, we'll answer anything that you want to know. So definitely send us an email. Just so you guys know, this session was recorded and it will show up on this same link shortly after this session. So if you want to rewatch anything that we've showed you or share it with a colleague, that link will take you there. We'll also follow up with an email with that link as well. Laura, I'm going to bring you up so we can say our final goodbyes. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, thank you for checking out Basecamp. You can always find more details. If you're not yet signed up for a free trial, basecamp.com is where you can do that. We encourage everyone to just sign up 30 days free so you can check it out, play around with it. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to us at